Welcome to Tuesday Talks, everybody. I'm Seema Kumar, and today we're excited to have one of Cure's special advisors with us, and that's Dr. Daniel Kraft. He actually needs no introduction, but for those of you who may not know him, he is a Harvard and Stanford-trained physician scientist, an expert in AI, a futurist, founder and chair of NextMed, and a four-time TED talker, shall I say, who talks about the future of medicine and AI and how it's all going to come together and shape us as a human race, but also, set us up for success in the field of health and medicine. So we are also thrilled to have you here tonight at the rooftop, where we're going to be speaking about AI and many, many, many more things, and also about women's health. But for now, I want to talk to you, first of all, about AI. Right? Because, you typically, the way I've seen you is you stand up, give a talk, and you dazzle everybody in the audience with all of the possibilities that AI brings to us. And yet people have concerns, and the whole world is buzzing about AI. What are your thoughts about AI, the promise and the perils of AI, and should we be concerned about it?
Well, first of all, Seema, great to be here at the Cure, live from New York. Exciting to be in this amazing organization. And I think of myself more as a nowist, never a futurist. I trained as a traditional physician and scientist, did internal medicine, pediatrics, hematology, oncology, spent time in the trenches and the research labs and looking at the convergence of technology and innovation. And AI is certainly the hot topic and not even a buzzword, but I would frame it now as still early days. I mean, we're less than 2 years since GPT launched, right? And everyone's, I think, familiar with Moore's law, the power of accelerating computation. But there's also something called Amara's law, where we tend to sometimes overhype and overexpect what might happen in 2 years and underexpect what will happen in a decade. And if we look back a decade with AI, maybe 12 years ago, we had IBM Watson, and we thought we were going to have Dr. Watson in a couple of years, and that took a little longer. But now we're seeing AI and machine learning and big data and digital health really start to super converge and really start to meet reality and make clinical impact. But I think what's most exciting, given that it's still early days, is it's not yet something that's going to replace a clinician or all elements of care, but it can start to do some of those easy button elements. It can start to do the patient-doctor relationship and get out of the way and write my note for me, so we're not having as much burnout. It's starting to integrate all this big data from our genome and metabolome and microbiome and sociome and start to give us this early vision of the digital twin, so that if you're my patient, I'm not just treating you based on my knowledge and what I might have read or forgotten from medical school, but based on the crowdsourced knowledge from across the planet. So it's still early days. The challenge with all these technologies is the regulatory environment, the reimbursement, the social elements, and in clinical world, the culture of change is often quite incremental. So it's early days, but AI converging with many other technologies has amazing potential.
And at the end of the day, AI is not something that's going to happen in the future. It's already being used, not probably at the level it could be in the most efficient way to benefit society. But AI is not something new, right? Why the buzz now? Why now?
Well, I think it's on that sort of exponential. If we go back to the point where, companies have been disrupted. Kodak invented digital photography, but didn't want to cut their film sales because early digital photography was pretty lousy.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, on the exponential, became amazing. They went bankrupt in 2012, the same year Instagram was built and sold by 12 kids down the street from me in Palo Alto for a couple $1 billion. So if you're not sort of looking at where things are going to be, and we have these linear mindsets, it's often hard to predict. So I think the buzz now is that now becomes sort of the easy button. Everyone can access GPT and use it in some cases to cheat, making art, doing their talking points, writing their essays. There's a challenge though. There's a famous quote from Sam Altman that GPT is like an e-bike for the brain. But I think the caveat is, what if your kids never learn how to ride a regular bike or never develop their biking muscles? My daughter never learned how to drive without GPS. She doesn't have great spatial sense. So there's pluses and minuses when the future physicians never learn to do a differential diagnosis without the help of a GPT. But the bottom line is, I think now we have it as an engine that can plug into all sorts of forms of early prevention and diagnostics, public health, ways of optimizing therapy, and connecting the dots between all these new forms of data.
So, connecting the dots, I mean, that's what you talked about, superconvergence, right? What's converging and what can we expect to see out of this convergence, let's say in the next 5 years and next 10 years?
I think what's probably most relevant is in medicine, we sort of have lots of studies and we kind of go to the mean, and there's no average patient, right? Each of us doesn't probably have the average temperature of 98.6.
Yes.
This sort of one-size-fits-all medicine we tend to practice, even though we advocate precision medicine. In fact, for the 10 top grossing drugs sold in the United States the last decade, they're only effective for about 1 in 4 to 1 in 24 of the patients who take them. So we have a long way to go to precision medicine. But I think this advent of generative AI, LLMs, big data, machine learning is going to bring us to an age where each of us will understand our own baseline from our wearables, our sleep data, our resting heart rate, our response to stress. We'll have a $100 genome, which is already here today, soon a $10 genome. We'll have insights into our metabolomics from CGMs. Even our voice can be a biomarker for metabolic disease. And we'll start to layer these together so that as a clinician or a drug developer or anybody in the health tech space, it's not going to be sort of one size fits all, including on the design side. So today, your Apple Watch, your Fitbit, your nice quantified self app is very much the same UI for Seema as for Daniel. And I think we'll move into an area of what I like to call generative health, where it's based on your age, culture, language, personality type, incentives, health journey targets. And these sort of health coaches will be around not just as coaches, but also to guide us on prevention, diagnostics, and therapy. And that will sort of become this magical interface where AI is going to become interlaced into health and wellness and the sick care side of the equation.
I mean, just imagining what that looks like, and all the potential use cases for the future is dizzying, and that's what makes people a little overwhelmed and concerned. But let's talk a little bit about specific use cases, right, for that's happening now using generative AI in health and medicine, right? Because it's the large language models, the ChatGPT that all of a sudden has kind of turned the tide on the conversation about AI. So talk a little bit about the use cases.
I mean, some of the use cases are back to the ability now to upload your labs from Quest, and maybe you have a couple years of labs that can. I did this the other day. I had Quest labs from 6 months ago, from 2 years ago, from 4 years ago. I asked it to look at them all, look at the comparisons, and see what had changed. Like hemoglobin A1C had gone up a couple points. What does that mean for my metabolic health? I mean, those would be. I'm a physician. It's still hard to read those labs and start to integrate that. That's sort of the easy button. You can now go to Google LM or ChatGPT and upload your X-rays as well. Start to read them. I just funded a company in collaboration with AI Fund with Andrew Ng, launching in India, where there's many folks, as you know, have no access to primary care or medical access. It's pretty amazing integrating multiple LLMs to start doing triage, giving you guidance to what labs maybe you need to go to the ER right away. Some of these things can't be done because of regulatory constraints in the United States, but they'll leapfrog to India and other places and show their value. So a lot of things are already happening outside of our usual constraints in the Western world. Another piece that's sort of here, I was at Genentech headquarters literally yesterday, is AI for drug discovery. We know the cost and time to develop a drug. We're seeing the first examples of AI-identified targets and drugs that have now entered clinical trials and show great efficacy. So that's another existing use case. And my favorite, kind of the fun one, I think, is blending this with now this world of augmented, virtual, and extended reality, spatial computing. The next generation Apple Vision Pros or Meta glasses starting to blend clinical data if you're a surgeon or a primary care doctor or a patient, so that when you look at your meal, it might show you the calories and nudge you in the right direction. Sort of blending that sort of insights and knowledge, kind of what I call situational awareness, to bring us to better continuous insights in action.
That's extraordinary to be thinking about that, and that could happen quickly, as we said. We also saw some really important use cases in our healthcare innovation challenge, which we did, AI for Good, Cure Exchange Innovation Challenge, on which you were one of the members of the selection committee and a judge. And there, for example, we saw somebody using AI as a way to read thousands and thousands and thousands of ultrasounds to be able to democratize ultrasound, in terms of women's health. That's an example. And another example was, the company co-founded by David Fajgenbaum and Grant, right? Every Cure. That's another use case of what could happen, right? Talk a little bit about why that use case is important.
So David Fajgenbaum, an amazing physician scientist and patient out of University of Pennsylvania, had developed Castleman's disease, and as a patient, helped to find a repurposed drug, tacrolimus, used in my world of bone marrow transplant, to seem to cure his Castleman's. And it was an example of using data and insights to find one drug to apply to his disease. And now every Cure and the work they're doing based right here at Cure
Yes.
is now using AI machine learning to look at the databases and the clinical and the biologic interfaces of other drugs and other targets to maybe find already approved generic drugs that could be applied for many rare and maybe even common diseases. And that's the kind of element that might have enabled one postdoc over a 6-year PhD to find one potential element. And now with this sort of superconvergence, that can be accelerated and bring new drugs to new cures for many rare diseases. In fact, many diseases are rare diseases. Type 2 diabetes, we can now sequence diabetics and understand their at least one of 3 distinct subtypes. Everything from autism to lung cancer, and I'm an oncologist, can be sort of subsetted. And the challenge is how do we kind of create that precision oncologic therapy, the digital twin for each individual, and then crowdsource that knowledge, just like we do when we drive with Google Maps or Waze, so that we have insights and knowledge shared by other patients and other samples, as opposed to sort of trying to figure out the road by ourselves and getting stuck in traffic.
Yeah, what struck me, and I hope I'm getting the numbers right, but there is 3,000 approved drugs and about 30,000 diseases. So at the end of the day, you kind of mix and match and see if any of the approved drugs could work against one of these diseases. And lo and behold, you have an already marketed drug that allows you to like leapfrog for a new indication. And that's the kind of work that's already happening and holds the potential for future. And startups like that, right? Biotech startups, they're sort of trying to solve a problem and looking to figure out a way to use, whether it's AI or anything that's transformational and new, to found companies, but also have an impact on human lives and human health. So what kind of impact will AI have on the biotech industry, you think?
Well, it's not just AI. For anybody, a kid in a garage or in their high school in high school or in college or beyond now has the power of leveraging massive data sets and machine learning that you can buy for $20 a month to parse existing published articles that may be going way back. Many clinical trials now have their data available. So you can now, as a high school student, find a repurposed drug and run a trial in mouse models and then potentially bring it to humans. I started in science. I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland. I could bike to the NIH. My high school science fair project did quite well, won all the international awards. It ended up as a cure for allergies, blocking the Ig receptor. At the time, we couldn't make humanized monoclonals. I published it, didn't think about it. I got a call from Genentech 6 years later when I was a Stanford medical student looking for my original student paper because that drug, that approach eventually led to Xolair. If I now had some of that knowledge, even as a high school student, I might have filed IP and started a biotech
You might have been a billionaire by now.
Yeah, so the power is now much more democratized in many realms, right? The power of home diagnostics, the ability to 3D print a demo for a medical device. So many of us are now need knowers. We see a clinical problem that we have, or our parents or our family members, or we see as a clinician in the hospital. It's an amazing time now to help solve for these grand challenges, and entrepreneurship and biotechnology and AI as a piece of that can really accelerate things.
So you recently launched digital.health, which is a platform to help people discover, leading diseases and, find solutions for themselves. Tell me a little bit about that and why is that important?
So as the world of health and medicine converges with technology, we still have large gaps, right? We're still using fax machines and DVD-ROMs to communicate in paper forms. I gave a TED Talk, my second one, back in 2011. The future of medicine, there's an app for that. And there were about maybe 10,000 apps and maybe 5 or 6 wearables. Fitbit had just come out in 2009. Now there's thousands of wearable devices and apps and software as a medical device. Some are FDA cleared for radiology or for mental health. And I used to track that in my brain. Now it's hard to do that. So I like to solve problems. And so I was lucky to get the domain digital.health, easy to remember. You go to digital.health and you can find over 4,000 digital health and health technology related solutions. You might be looking for solutions for ADHD for a kid, and you can find FDA cleared video games that can treat them instead of Ritalin. You might be searching for diabetes solutions for yourself running a medical practice or as a patient. We have sections based on clinical specialties. So the idea is to be precision digital health. How do you find the right solution for what your need is as a clinician or a hospital system, or eventually as a consumer, for your metabolic health journey, or for managing heart disease, or for those interested in health span and longevity. So go to digital.health, and it's a free platform to help find and favorite and save and even prescribe digital health and solutions so that a lot of what's already here but not evenly distributed can become utilized.
Since you're a physician, I have to ask you this question. So a few weeks ago, I was at a roundtable in which there was a discussion ongoing about many young physicians, the next generation, is a little bit leaving the profession in part because of two things. One, patients are coming to them already having self-diagnosed and second-guessing the physician, the doctor. That's number one. Number two is all the misinformation that's out there, right? And so with both of those, physicians' jobs may be getting a little bit harder, and so the patient-physician relationship is changing. Now, you're sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum, enabling patients to actually empower themselves with all these tools and help. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about patients empowering themselves with knowledge, data? Obviously, the misinformation part is a different story.
Yes, I think we're moving hopefully from sick care to health care and even self-care. Each of us now can be much more engaged, not just with our health data. We don't want to look at the raw data from our wearables and our genomes. It can be now smartly interfaced and presented to us in a way that, again, matches our knowledge level. If you're a PhD in biostatistics or you have an 8th grade level and speak a different language, that can be presented to you. I think the bigger question is, today we already have a massive shortage, actually, maybe not in New York City, of physicians, specialists, nurses, and beyond. Many parts of the country have 1,000 miles without a pediatric psychiatrist, for example. So the power, I think, and the potential is to upskill each of us to be a little more engaged with our own health. The new drug is the empowered, engaged patient, to be involved and proactive when they can see not just their data, but the insights and the actionable information to keep them from getting diabetes or heart disease, or optimize their mental health, not just to treat a mental health condition. That is going to mean challenges for the healthcare world. It used to be that patients would show up with their Google searches. Now it's Dr. GPT, which can do a pretty remarkable job of differential diagnosis. We've seen examples where a family, went to 15 specialists, never got the answer, and by using GPT found the rare tethered cord diagnosis for their child and had it sort of fixed. So the question is going to be for the next generation of doctors, nurses, pharmacists, physical therapists, biotechnologists, how do you educate them, right? Who gets into medical school? Is it based on being good at memorization and physics and organic chemistry, or better emotional intelligence, or better video games if you're going to be a surgeon or doing interventional procedures? And today, medical schools don't have the curriculum that really is supporting this new digitally enabled, AI-enabled age. So there'll be challenges, but big picture, AI is not going to replace your doctor, but the doctors and other folks using AI will replace those who don't. And so we're going to need to see how to interface. And my hope is not for the technology to replace your clinician, but to help technology get out of the way so we can do more patient-doctor relationship, that face-to-face, and I'm going to be typing my medical record, which is the old model. We'll have more time where I'm going to help us converge on what digital and AI-enabled solutions will help best optimize your wellness.
Or maybe we both sit in front of the computer and look at my digital twin, and you say, Seema, you need to be walking more, you need to be eating less salt, or what have you.
Well, in fact, we won't be meeting often,
in real.
Well, we'll still have face-to-face, hopefully, but it can be augmented, not this virtual versus physical, this phygital world, right? The next generation interfaces won't just be on a Zoom screen. There's now that world I like to call not the metaverse, but the mediverse, right? Where you're going to put on your AR goggles and we'll feel like we're exactly in the same room. We can see ourselves three-dimensionally, or you can show up as your avatar, and that's super helpful for folks with autism or other sorts of elements. They can show up in different ways. I think it's going to give us an opportunity to have digital empathy. You might get little nudges from me, little texts, little sweet nothings in your ear, but I'm not typing them. My AI coach is providing it to you in ways that you still feel engaged with me, and many patients respond and do things for their clinician. So I think the clinician-patient relationship can be strengthened with AI machine learning in this new virtualized age, not disrupted.
Daniel, as always, listening to you, I'm just awed and, in awe, I should say, and it's all positive. Any reason to be concerned, and what should we be watching out for?
Well, like anything else, if these things have power, you can use AI and synthetic biology to synthesize a new drug or a bioterrorism weapon. You can 3D print a medication or a medical implant or a gun. So I think we need to be smart about the guardrails, but at the same time, letting data converge. There's, everyone knows HIPAA and loves to hate HIPAA. It's a well-meaning regulation from the 1980s or 90s before the digital age, and now it slows down some of the sharing of data. People want to be data donors. I've seen patients die with their privacy intact when we could have helped that data flow and saved them in a faster, better way. So I think there's dangers to the point now where your camera can pick up your vital signs and detect a disease. Your genome can be picked up from your mug. What happens when your employer has that, or your insurance company? How do we sort of let data stay private and anonymized, but still feed this new kind of Google Maps or ways of healthcare? So there's some challenges there. I think you also could see the haves and the have-nots. If anyone seen the movie Gattaca, which is now essentially a very prescient movie from 30 years ago, we're in the era of $100 genomes and starting to mix and modify our genomes. What happens when they're the genetic haves and have-nots who want to live a long time and we have big disparities? My hope for technology is that it can sort of lower the disparities. Almost everyone has a smartphone, can have a low-cost wearable, and that could be part of our integrated self-care and improve outcomes. Because we know in the United States, it's just published by my friends at Commonwealth Foundation, we spend the most but have the worst outcomes per dollar. There's a long way to go in the United States to bring better health and equity and not be fear-mongered by some of the challenges, but solve for them together.
Yep. So I know that in December you have your Next Med Health 2024 conference coming up. What can we expect this year? Who are some of the all-stars who are going to be speaking? And what can we take away from that meeting for those who are attending? So
brief framing, I'm an accidental nowist or futurist. Back in 2011, I founded a little program called Future Med, and then it became Exponential Medicine. And since 2013, we've been running this amazing gathering at the Hotel del Coronado in San Diego on the beach. And the power of that convergence was that many medical conferences are very siloed. They're pharma or oncology or cardiology or med device. And I started bringing my friends together from all these different realms to go, what is the future of health and medicine driven by this super convergence of technologies and letting people see where the puck is going? So Next Med Health, nextmed.health is the website, is going to again be at December 10th to 13th. You were lucky and fortunate to have you join us last year. And we bring together 60 plus faculty from around the world to see what's now, near, next, and needed in healthcare. And everything from AI and robotics and 3D printing and nanotech and chatbots and drones to psychedelics to beyond. So some of the folks we have coming this year, from Eric Topol to Dean Kamen, amazing engineer, to Rick Doblin on maps and psychedelics. We have Michelle Garrison from the Buck Institute looking at the future of women's health and longevity and ovarian health. We have folks like Ed Boyden from MIT on the future of neuroscience. He's one of the co-inventors of optogenetics. We've got the chair of innovation from UCSD and Boston Children's, where I trained. So I won't run through the whole faculty list, but it's often not the faculty, but people who come from usually 30 countries, and we let our hair down. We're at the beach. We have beach bonfires and chocolate cacao ceremonies with Jamie Metzel, and we kind of look at this future in a different way and mix in art and magic and music, and it really helps spark people's creativity in the art of the possible. We have about 70 startups in our innovation lab. And so everyone's welcome. Go to nextmed.health to look at some of the prior content, folks like David Fagemam and sessions with you and others, and come join us this year to kind of catalyze the future a bit faster and address a lot of the pain points that we still have to solve for.
Well, thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you for being here at Cure and looking forward to all that Next Med has to hold in December. And I will see you on the rooftop a little bit later. We're going to have a little taste.
We'll have a taste of the future medicine tonight with Chris Mason, who will also be at Next Med. I'll add one last piece for folks who are listening or watching live from New York or taped from New York, is that, there's that famous quote from William Gibson, the future's already here, just not evenly distributed.
Yes.
And, if you have a clinical problem, high blood pressure, mental health challenges, diabetes, don't wait for your doctor, your nurse, your healthcare system always to bring you the solution and pay for it. A lot of things are already available. Go to digital.health and search for them. If you have a pain point that's not solved for, you can become the entrepreneur and build these teams. It's an amazing time to invest in technology. I have a seed stage venture fund called Continuum Health Ventures. We see amazing innovations, many of which are being built by folks who are not doctors, nurses, biotechnologists. They see the pain point and they bring solutions, and they entrepreneur to bring these solutions to the world faster. So it's time to not, just to predict the future, but for us to collaborate in building it together.
Absolutely, and entrepreneurs is what we're all about, entrepreneurship, and more of that to find cures and advance health. Thank you for joining, Daniel, and thank you all for joining Tuesday Talks. We'll see you next week.